The areas from which Russian troops have recently left. Yesterday, I conveyed to President Zelensky my condolences and assured him of the European Commission's full support in these terrible times. These atrocities cannot and will not be left unanswered. The perpetrators of these heinous crimes must not go unpunished. The European Union has set up a joint investigation team with Ukraine. Its task is to collect evidence and investigate war crimes and crimes against humanity in Ukraine. Russia is waging a cruel and ruthless war, not only against Ukraine's brave troops, but also against its civilian population. It is important to sustain utmost pressure on Putin and the Russian government at this crucial point. The 4 packages of sanctions have hit hard and limited the Kremlin's political and economic options. We're seeing tangible results, but clearly, in view of events, we need to increase our pressure further. So today, we are proposing to take our sanctions a step further. We will make them broader and sharper so that they cut even deeper into the Russian economy. This 5th package has 6 pillars. First, we will impose an import ban on coal from Russia worth 4 billion euros per year. This will cut another important revenue source for Russia. Second, a full transaction ban on 4 key Russian banks, among them VTB, the 2nd largest Russian bank. These 4 banks, which we now totally cut off from the markets, represent 23% of market share in the Russian banking sector. This will further weaken Russia's financial system. Third, a ban on Russian vessels and Russian-operated vessels from accessing EU ports. Certain exemptions will cover essentials such as agriculture and food products, humanitarian aid, as well as energy. Additionally, we will propose a ban on Russian and Belarusian road transport operators. This ban will drastically limit the options for Russian industry to obtain key goods. Fourth, further targeted export bans worth 10 billion euros in areas in which Russia is vulnerable. This includes, for example, quantum computers and advanced semiconductors, but also sensitive machinery and transportation equipment. With this, we will continue to degrade Russia's technological base and industrial capacity. Fifth, specific new import bans worth 5.5 billion euros to cut the money stream of Russia and its oligarchs on products from wood to cement, from seafood to liquor. In doing this, we also close loopholes between Russia and Belarus. Sixth, we take a number of very targeted measures, such as a general EU ban on participation of Russian companies in public procurement in member states, or an exclusion of all financial support, being in European or national, to Russian public bodies, because European tax money should not go to Russia in whatever shape or form. Finally, we are also proposing further listings of individuals, which HRVP Joseph Borrell will explain to you. But this is not all. We're working on additional sanctions, including on oil imports, and we are reflecting on some of the ideas presented by the member states, such as taxes or specific payment channels, such as an escrow account. Today, more than 40 countries apply sanctions like these. To take a clear stand is not only crucial for us in Europe, but also for the rest of the world. A clear stand against Putin's war of choice. A clear stand against the massacre of civilians. And a clear stand against the violation of the fundamental principles of the world order. Slava Ukraine.
The European Union's position has been very clear. We will continue to advance the sanctions as long as the Russian aggression continues. We are today submitting a proposal for more sanctions to further cripple Putin's war machinery following the atrocities committed by the Russian armed forces in Bucha and other places under Russian occupation in Ukraine. We continue to follow with horror the brutal siege of Mariupol and these haunting images of large number of civilian deaths and casualties and destruction of civilian infrastructures. This adds to reports of inhuman and degrading treatment by the Russian occupation forces on the civilian population in Ukraine. They show the true face of this war, the war of Kremlin against Ukraine and its people. And we are now proposing for the Council approval to scale up bans on certain exports, including technologies and jet fuel, include also banning imports of goods which provide significant revenue to the state budget, prohibiting imports of some fuels, particularly coal, proposing further financial measures and prohibiting Russian vessels from entering the European Union ports. The President of the Commission has elaborated in detail on these sectoral sanctions. From my side, let me explain that we are also extending the sanctions list, adding dozens of people from politics, the business sector, and engaged in propaganda activities, and also more entities from financial, military, industrial, and transport sectors. And among them, 4 important banks, Russian banks that will not only be taken out of the SWIFT system, but also forbidden of taking any kind of activity and participating in any kind of transactions inside the European Union. Again, we are not targeting Russian people. We are targeting the Kremlin, the political and economic elites, the ones who are supporting Putin's war in Ukraine. The aim of our sanctions is to stop the reckless, inhuman, and aggressive behavior of the Russian troops, and to make clear to the decision makers in the Kremlin that their illegal aggression comes at a heavy cost. We are also taking other steps in reaction to the murderous behavior by the Kremlin and its troops. The Russians' illegal and disruptive actions against the interests and security of the European Union and the European Union member states, including breaching the 1961 Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations, are not staying without a firm response. And that's why today I decided to designate persona non grata a number of officials of the permanent missions of the Russian Federation to the European Union for engaging in activities contrary to their diplomatic status. The External Action Service of the European Union, the Secretary General, is summoning the Russian ambassador to the European Union today to communicate this decision.
Does it work? Still doesn't work. Yes. They have We're self-congratulatory. Does it work? Yes, it works. Okay, good. So we are. So we start with the first question, which will be put by a representative of the EPP group, starting with Jan Olbrycht.
Pani Przewodnicząca Parlamentu, Pani Przewodnicząca Komisji Europejskiej, chciałbym zaznaczyć, że jesteśmy świadkami bezprecedensowej sytuacji w historii Unii Europejskiej. Nigdy do tej pory żadna instytucja europejska nie stanęła przed tak poważnymi zagadnieniami. W czasie naszej kadencji zarówno Komisja Europejska, jak i Parlament Europejski staje przed wyzwaniami tak trudnymi, że prawdę mówiąc nie za bardzo wiemy, jak z tego wybrnąć. To przypomina trochę sytuację testu na wytrzymałość, na odporność. Czy Unia to wytrzyma? Czy Unia jest na tyle odporna? Tylko że to nie są ćwiczenia. To nie są ćwiczenia, to jest absolutnie rzeczywistość. W związku z tym chciałem zadać kilka pytań pani przewodniczącej. Po pierwsze, biorąc pod uwagę doświadczenia z szczepionkami, z COVID-em, chciałbym zapytać panią przewodniczącą, jakiego typu lekcje wyciąga Komisja Europejska z tego doświadczenia? Co się udało, a co się nie udało, jeżeli chodzi o działania związane z COVID-em i ze szczepionkami? A w związku z tym, jeżeli popatrzymy na dzisiejszą sytuację, a chciałem tylko przypomnieć pani przewodniczącej, że my jako grupa złożyliśmy dokumenty, informacje do Komisji Europejskiej, co uważamy za najpilniejsze. Chciałbym w związku z tym zapytać panią przewodniczącą, w jaki sposób Komisja Europejska ma zamiar podejść do aktualnej sytuacji. Jakie są krótkofalowe plany, jakie są długofalowe plany? Czy Komisja Europejska ma zamiar przeprowadzić to, co my nazywamy w naszych dokumentach stres testem? Przegląd legislacji zarówno istniejącej, jak i tej w trakcie pod kątem zupełnie nowych warunków. Czy Komisja ma zamiar przeprowadzić taki stres test i kiedy? Czy Komisja Europejska ma zamiar podejść do kwestii budżetowych w sposób taki radykalny, jeżeli chodzi o po pierwsze rewizję MFF-u, a także sprawdzenie sposobu wykorzystania Funduszu Odbudowy NGEU? Czy Komisja zamierza wprowadzić działania dotyczące lepszej koordynacji przyjmowania uchodźców na terenie Unii Europejskiej? To są moje pytania. Bardzo proszę panią przewodniczącą o odpowiedź.
Thank you, Mr. Olbrycht. Commission President, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. Many questions. For the beginning, indeed, the first question you asked was on the lessons learned with the vaccines. And if there's one lesson we have learned with the vaccines is for huge global challenges, the one and only way to address them is as 27 with unity. Just imagine for a second that all 27 member states would have gone on their own what the vaccines are concerned. Then 3 or 4 member states perhaps would have had vaccines. The rest would not have had any access to vaccines. It would have completely destroyed our European Union. So the first lesson is indeed the big challenges. We are much better together if we act united. Of course, we developed strategies or also structures that are necessary after this pandemic. For example, HERA, for example, the Health Union. So we understand that we have improved and adapt and modernize our structures. What the budgetary issues are concerned, indeed, we have a tight budget, without any doubt. I have not forgotten the negotiations around the budget, and it's tight, and it's programmed now. And it's very much allocated to the different topics. And now we see how it is when you have almost no wiggle room, because there's no extra money. We cannot print money. There's no free money. So it's very much bound. And indeed, with a midterm review, we have to check, we have to look what have we done, what is ahead of us. Are we still on track with what we have allocated? But there's a third element in your question referring to Next Generation EU. Why did we form or develop Next Generation EU, because we understood the crisis is so huge, the crisis is so dominant, that with the usual means and instruments and fund allocation, we are not able to manage it. So we did the one and only correct thing, that we said, let's do it as 27 Europeans together. And what we did better compared to the financial crisis, for example, there the solution was intergovernmental. So it was just the prescription for fragmentation that you could see. This time we had trust on the European level, 27 member states backing the European Commission to raise capital on the market, and the rest of the elements you very much know. So this shows that, yes, we have our budget, we have our usual procedures, but for extraordinary situations, we sometimes need extraordinary means and step forward. Finally, I cannot see my time because there are so many. So no, I'm already way over my time. Sorry. But I need a little hole to see the seconds there. And honourable members, if it's fine with you, I remain standing because I have a medical issue on my back, so it's better for me I remain standing and look at you. Lectern would be fine too, but no, I think we agreed on this year this way.
Thank you very much. No supplementary question from Mr. Olbrycht, I see, or one quickly, 30 seconds.
By the way, Madam President, we are not speaking about midterm review, but midterm revision. But my question was, what about the stress test? I mean, the revision of legislative which is existing in future. Thank you.
Not if it's appropriate, because things you have done in the past might have been good for the past, but the question, and this is the stress test element, is it fit for purpose? Is it fit for the future? Why not? Is my answer.
Thank you very much. The next speaker on behalf of the S&D Group is Irache García Pérez.
Gracias, Presidenta. Presidenta von der Leyen, la pandemia y la guerra de Ucrania han dado otro rostro de la Unión Europea. La Unión ha demostrado que el proyecto europeo puede ser también un poderoso escudo para la salud de las personas, para también defender la seguridad de la ciudadanía europea y para mejorar sus condiciones de vida. La Cumbre Social de Oporto fue una oportunidad en la que los líderes adoptaron una serie de medidas y se comprometieron a seguir trabajando por el pilar de derechos sociales, respaldando las propuestas y los objetivos urgentes en este sentido. Sin embargo, es el momento de saber qué es lo que está haciendo la Comisión al respecto de esta cuestión. La pandemia y la guerra no pueden sino justificar más ambición que nunca para poder avanzar en el ámbito social del proyecto europeo. En 2019 la Comisión nos presentó una agenda social que es más urgente que nunca, y por eso le pregunto ¿dónde estamos con esas propuestas del sistema europeo de reaseguros de prestaciones por desempleo o el objetivo de reducir en 15 millones las personas que viven bajo el umbral de la pobreza?
Thank you. President, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. Indeed, the core value and the hallmark of the European Union is its social market economy. Nowhere in the world do you have this exclusive and phenomenal model as we have it here, which is very clear, and it's the success model after World War II, to say we all work hard together, but the benefits of our work is being evenly distributed. So there are checks and balances, and you know the elements from employer associations to trade unions to figure out where the right balance is. And the second topic, which is for me of utmost importance, and that is the social security system. The social security system that says everybody pays in, and we make sure that the big risks in life, you're not let down, you're not alone, but we support you. It's poverty, it's made old age, it might be health or sickness. So these topics, unemployment, are covered. And I am deeply convinced that this is one of the secrets why the European Union is so successful and why the single market is so successful. And therefore, it's always important to contribute to it. You have been asking about the unemployment reinsurance. The sure element which was crucial during the pandemic, is a typical unemployment reinsurance, because it had all the elements that were necessary to say to the companies, or to signal to the companies, don't dismiss your employees in the times of crisis, and we support you keeping them in the company even if there's not enough work to do, because we know at the end of this crisis, skilled labor will be crucial to jump back again and to move forward to growth again. And it was the right thing to do. It was round about 100 billion. I think 94, 95 billion have been allocated to 19 member states. And that was one of the reasons why I was about to say in the aftermath of the pandemic, but we're not there yet. When things got better after the worst part of the pandemic, our economy bounced back so rapidly because we had the skilled personnel and could immediately take on the orders that came worldwide. Of course, there are other topics that we have to or had worked on, for example, the child guarantee, just to name one, but also in the agenda where we had to fight child poverty, social exclusion. You know that member states should at least use 5% of their ESF plus resources. I thank a lot that this is now a law that is put in place here. Without your help, it would not have been possible. And there are other topics we'll certainly, I see my time is again short, we'll certainly talk again about.
Thank you very much, Irache. 30 seconds.
Por supuesto, el modelo social europeo es un modelo de éxito si somos capaces realmente de garantizar un equilibrio entre el crecimiento económico y la justicia social. Y eso se refiere a que seamos capaces de aprovechar ese crecimiento económico, se traduzca en que las personas puedan vivir mejor. Y, por lo tanto, querría saber dónde está la propuesta de la Comisión Europea de presentar una legislación sobre rentas mínimas en la Unión Europea que puedan implementar las acciones de los Estados miembros.
Thank you, President.
So the minimum wage directive is on its way, as you know. And I think it has a fair chance, and I hope it will be concluded. It is important for the minimum wage, for example, to really have a look at what we are asking for. I'm a deep believer of collective bargaining. This is, in my eyes, the right way to go forward for a minimum wage. And this is what is in the proposal. So it's very clearly signaling to those member states, and we have many of them, that have already a good collective bargaining system in place, to tell them, you're fine. That's a good system. Keep on going with that, and it works. We've seen that. But to those where this is not in place and where there is not really any kind of protection to the lower level of the income, there we signal very clearly, put in place, if possible, a collective bargaining system. If possible, the best is with employer unions and trade unions. If not, there are suggestions how to come to a minimum wage that strikes the right balance, not to be too low, not to be too high in the circumstances a member state needs. So we've proposed, I think, a good model. It is also something which creates fairness among the member states and the market of 27. And if there's anything we've learned, then it is our single market functions best if it's well balanced, if there's fairness in it, if it is harmonious also in its rules. But this is another topic. So to finish and to conclude, the minimum wage directive would be absolutely a goal to go for.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to Stéphane Séjourné.
Pardon. Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente. Merci aux deux présidentes d'abord vous, Madame, d'avoir permis à cet exercice, et puis Madame la Présidente de vous plier à cet exercice démocratique que mon groupe avait beaucoup soutenu et je pense qu'il est nécessaire. Peut-être pour commencer, nous faisions le constat sur le long terme que notre continent n'a n'a pas encore les outils pour garantir son autonomie. Ce constat, nous l'avions fait ici, dans ce Parlement européen, dès 2019, avec notamment la Commission, et mon groupe politique avait soutenu les orientations de la Commission à cette époque, que nous trouvions bonnes. La guerre en Ukraine vient d'ailleurs valider la nécessité de travailler sur nos réformes internes, sur nos objectifs de transition, sur l'autonomie stratégique et sur nos réformes également institutionnelles. Ma question est donc assez simple, Madame la Présidente. Est-ce que la Commission compte revoir ses priorités axées au début de mandat en 2019? Et ma deuxième question est également assez simple. Est-ce que la Commission va présenter un plan global pour renforcer notre autonomie stratégique? Est-ce que vous comptez présenter quelques réformes supplémentaires ou revoir un certain nombre de priorités au vu de la crise du Covid et de la guerre en Ukraine?
Thank you very much, President.
Indeed, we had a cascade of crises. And looking back now to these 2.5 years, I remember we had 95 days in the mandate when the pandemic hit. Well, and you all know we are 2.5 years in the mandate, and now we have a war at our doorstep. We have fixed 3 priorities at the very beginning. The European Green Deal, and this is the huge, big, enormous crisis looming in the back and ongoing, getting more and more serious, more and more severe. If you read the World Climate Council comments yesterday and today, you're aware of that. And then we had the other crisis I was just talking about. So the European Green Deal, absolutely necessary, first priority, and we'll certainly speak in depth in this question time about it. Digital, self-explaining. Resilient. Well, had I known before what is hidden behind the word resilient, resilience, now we know it. What have we done? We have not only had the pandemic common strategy, and actually we are world leaders what the effects are concerned. We have exported 2 billion doses of vaccines. In comparison, just to give you that, China 1.2 billion. We have the population, the best vaccinated population for a region like we are with 450 million Europeans, 72% now boosted and 72% fully vaccinated and 52% boosted. We have been working on the resilience in the health union. Now, indeed, to come to the part in your question, looking back and looking forward, is it still the right priorities? My answer is absolutely yes. But within the resilience part, I would emphasize stronger European defence and a conducive environment for our single market, focusing on the modern elements that we need. For example, hydrogen, for example, semiconductors. We will certainly also speak in depth about that in the question time. But the general approach, European Green Deal, digital and resilience, is the right one, with new emphasis in the resilience part on defence and on the conducive economic environment.
Thank you very much. Do you have a supplementary question, Mr. Sejourné?
C'est bon. Oui, juste pour vous remercier. Un des piliers importants, et on l'a vu notamment, c'est le pilier de l'état de droit. Vous le savez, on n'a pas évoqué le sujet, mais ça faisait partie des priorités fondamentales de ce mandat. On voit bien qu'il est remis en cause, et je suis convaincu, et nous restons convaincus, que nous serons forts en dehors de l'Union européenne si nous sommes forts, y compris sur nos valeurs en interne en Union européenne. Alors ma question était aussi simple, en follow-up, qu'est-ce que vous comptez faire de la Hongrie et de la Pologne?
I guess then 2 minutes, but I'll start. First of all, it was a big step forward to have the rule of law report, with the individual reporting on each member state. And indeed, if we now focus on many different issues, but the issues you have mentioning in Poland and in Hungary, there are 2 main topics. In Poland, it is the question of the independence of the judiciary. This is a big open question. where we have an issue without any question. And as you know, there is the Article 7 procedure. As we know, we launched infringements. And as we know, and I guess we will discuss it, we have the open question of the Resilience and Recovery Fund, Next Generation EU, which is not a typical instrument to deal with topics like that, but it's an instrument for reform. And we put in the request that a major, long-standing reform necessity in Poland is, in the European semester, independence of judiciary. So happy to follow up on that. With Hungary, we've been very clear the issue is corruption. And we have been very clear on the Article 7 procedure. There are infringements also on other topics. We have been discussing with Hungary questions that are concerning the Resilience and Recovery Fund. Here, the main requirement for reform is the anti-corruption question. And we are, at the moment, being not able to find a common ground and to conclude. And then, with 13 seconds left, there's the big topic of the question of the conditionality mechanism, and I'm happy to respond with fresh time on that.
Thank you very much, President. Next is Arnaud Danjean.
Madame la Présidente, une semaine, un peu plus d'une semaine avant l'invasion de l'Ukraine, la Commission a présenté sa communication sur la défense, ce qui était à l'époque assez ambitieux déjà, même si vos prérogatives sont limitées en la matière. Vous aviez notamment indiqué des pistes très concrètes comme les exonérations de TVA ou des incitations pour les financements des programmes collaboratifs et des achats en coopération au sein de l'Union européenne. Dans les deux conclusions du Conseil, celui de Versailles puis celui de Bruxelles, il semble que le Conseil n'ait pas véritablement embrayé sur vos propositions. Il y a juste un rappel comme quoi ces dispositions devaient être mises en œuvre, mais il n'y a pas vraiment d'accélération par rapport à un calendrier qui, au moment où il était fixé par la Commission, allait plutôt sur 2023-2024. L'urgence est là. Les mesures doivent être prises rapidement. Comment interprétez-vous cette relative frilosité du Conseil et est-ce que vous êtes toujours sur un échéancier plus rapide? Merci.
Thank you, President.
This topic is an urgent topic, and we have certainly, in a bitter way, learned our lessons. We are learning our lessons. Just to get it right, and this is very important always at the very beginning, NATO is the strongest military alliance in the world, and the European Union will never, ever be a military alliance. But I see fields where NATO is necessary, but I also see other theatres or other topics where the European Union has to be able to act and to defend itself. Interestingly, as you know, there's the Article 5 in NATO, and correspondent the Article 42.7. Now, what is the reality on the ground? The reality on the ground is we have 22 member states that are members of NATO, and we have 27 member states, of course, being members of the European Union. They all have one single set of forces. This is from the member states' view, the departure point. They have one single set of forces, and for them it's important that they can, if necessary, allocate these forces to a European mission, to a NATO mission, to a United Nations mission, or to a coalition of the willing. From the European perspective, for us it's important to look at, if we look at our 27 member states, what can we do to stop the fragmentation we do have between those 27? Where are the gaps that have to be filled with military capabilities? And what are capabilities we do not have at all and we need to build up? And therefore, if I take the last one, big topic for us, cybersecurity. Cybersecurity in the European Union is a must, and we have to get much better and build up real, reliable structures. The second topic is, if you look at the military capabilities, interoperability. Can these different troops work together immediately? Well, depends if they have the same military equipment. For that, we have created a system through PESCO and the European Defence Fund, that is nudging the member states to have a common research and development and to have a common procurement or development of capabilities. Now, what speed is concerned, mid-May, the Commission will present a gap analysis. And this is the basis then for us to, starting from that, have the discussion what is necessary, what do we have to build up, how are we going to build it up, and how are we going to finance it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Danjean, do you want a supplementary question? No. Thank you. Next is Gabi Bischoff.
Sehr geehrte Frau Präsidentin, ich freue mich, dass Sie hier sind. Ich wollte noch mal daran erinnern, dass wir in unserem Brief vor Ihrer Wahl als S&D-Fraktion eine Agenda der Veränderung gefordert haben, uns für eine Zukunftskonferenz stark gemacht haben, einen demokratischen Push erreichen wollten. Und wir haben das immer gesehen, auch da schon als Teil oder als Vorbereitung für einen Konvent. In 4 Wochen ist es soweit. Wir werden einen Bericht haben, wir werden Vorschläge haben der Zukunftskonferenz, die mit Bürgerinnen und Bürgern, die repräsentativ waren, vorgelegt worden sind. In Ihren politischen Guidelines, das hat mich damals sehr gefreut, haben Sie der Zukunftskonferenz großen Stellenwert eingeräumt. Sie haben sich auch für eine Stärkung der Demokratie und des Parlamentarismus eingesetzt und damals gesagt, Zitat, I'm also open to treaty changes. So, meine Frage deshalb ist, setzen Sie sich jetzt dementsprechend für einen Konvent im Anschluss an die Zukunftskonferenz ein? Vielen Dank.
Thank you, President.
Meine grundsätzliche Haltung ist immer noch dieselbe. Und wenn wir gerade hier die großen Themen der Zeit miteinander angerissen haben, ich würde nicht sagen besprochen haben, dazu reicht die Zeit nicht, dann ist uns allen klar, dass große Fragen zu beantworten sind. Ich finde ganz, ganz klasse, dass es gelungen ist, die Bürgerinnen und Bürger so einzubeziehen. Großen Dank nochmal an all die, die gewaltige Arbeit da auch geleistet haben in den vergangenen Monaten. Das ist absolut notwendig gewesen und vielen, vielen Dank dafür. Und jetzt werden wir in 4 Wochen Ergebnisse vorliegen haben, wo wir dann entscheiden müssen, wie gehen wir damit um? Wie gehen wir mit den großen Fragen der Gesundheitsunion um? Wie gehen wir mit den großen Fragen der Verteidigungsunion um? Ich nehme mal die Themen, die hier angerissen worden sind. Wie gehen wir mit der Frage der Energieunion um? Da werden wir sicherlich später noch drauf weiter eingehen. Wie gehen wir mit den Fragen der Erweiterung um und den drängenden Wünschen der Erweiterung, die da sind? Wie gehen wir in dem Zusammenhang mit der Einstimmigkeit um? Das sind die nicht umfassend, sondern einige der Fragen, die vor uns liegen. Und ich glaube, wir sollten offen sein für die Fragen, bedarf es einer Vertragsänderung, um hier einen wirklichen Schritt nach vorne machen zu können? Und haben uns die Krisen der Vergangenheit gezeigt, dass wir mit den alten Instrumenten oder den alten Begrenzungen nicht zurande kommen? Oder aber, und das ist auch ein wichtiger Punkt, können wir uns innerhalb der Verträge bewegen und innerhalb der Verträge Verbesserungen, Modernisierungen und Fortschritt hinkriegen? Diese Fragen liegen auf dem Tisch und wie gesagt, meine Haltung hat sich nicht verändert. Ich bin offen dafür.
Thank you very much. 30 seconds.
Vielen Dank. Darf ich da noch mal nachhaken und fragen, wenn die Bürgerinnen sich dafür einsetzen und wenn am Ende rauskommt, dass es bestimmte Vertragsänderungen bedarf, gerade im Bereich Stärkung der Demokratie und des Parlamentarismus, was wären aus Ihrer Sicht 3 Kernpunkte, die wir dann angehen müssten? Und würden Sie dann auch entsprechendes unterstützen?
Das ist jetzt ein bisschen eine hypothetische Frage nach vorne, ohne dass wir wissen, was die Bürgerinnen und Bürger uns vorschlagen und was unsere Ideen sind. Ja, aber wir können nicht erwarten, dass ich heute sozusagen Vertragsänderungen in 1 Minute und 52 Sekunden mal eben suffizient darlege. Ich glaube, das wäre auch respektlos gegenüber nicht nur der Zukunftskonferenz, sondern auch der Größe des Themas. Aber nochmal, ich bin offen, hier diese Themen zu besprechen. Das braucht Mut, den habe ich. Und das braucht Veränderungswillen. Und ich glaube, wir haben in den letzten 2,5 Jahren zusammen gezeigt, dass wir auf große, schwere Fragen mit dem entsprechenden Mut und Veränderungswillen reagieren können.
Thank you very much. Philippe Lamberts.
Merci Madame la Présidente. Face à cette première épreuve inattendue qu'a été la pandémie, vous avez su tenir le cap du Green Deal européen et en faire l'axe central du plan de relance. L'agression russe en Ukraine constitue une seconde épreuve et je vous avoue que je suis un peu inquiet. Sur le plan énergétique, vous avez déclaré que la seule stratégie d'indépendance crédible est de miser sur les renouvelables et les économies d'énergie, et je m'en réjouis. Mais pour l'instant, c'est le gaz qui est la pièce centrale du dispositif, ce qui confirme d'ailleurs la ligne choisie pour la taxonomie. Par ailleurs, le péché originel du Green Deal a été de laisser courir une politique agricole commune productiviste, largement basée sur les énergies fossiles. La stratégie dite de la ferme à la fourchette doit nous permettre de corriger le tir, mais voilà que les deux premiers textes visant à mettre en œuvre cette stratégie ont été retirés de l'agenda. Le lobby agro-industriel prétend que seule une agriculture intensive basée sur les engrais et les pesticides peut assurer notre sécurité alimentaire, alors que la vérité est que non seulement l'agroécologie est capable de nous nourrir, mais elle seule est capable de le faire en absorbant plutôt qu'en émettant du carbone et en restaurant plutôt qu'en massacrant la biodiversité. Donc ma question est toute simple. Est-ce que le Green Deal européen va être la première victime collatérale de Vladimir Poutine au moment où le GIEC nous demande d'accélérer?
Thank you, President.
Definitely not, first of all. And I think it's just the opposite. I think these last horrible 4 to 6 weeks have more than before shown us how important the European Green Deal is. We have seen the ugly dependency on fossil fuels. So moving away from fossil fuels into renewables and thus moving forward in the European Green Deal is not only a necessity because of the climate change we have to fight, but it's also a strategic investment in security. And therefore, if there's anything, there are certainly 3 things where Putin did never calculate on. The first one is the unity that we've shown in the European Union. The second one is the braveness of the Ukrainian population and soldiers. That's amazing to see that. The third one is that he is giving a strong push to get rid of the dependency of fossil fuels and to move forward to the strategic investment in renewables. If we just take Fit for 55, that has been designed before the war. Fit for 55, if we would go on as it is, and we will not because we will accelerate, so we need more of it. If we would only do that, it would already be 1/3 of our dependency of Russian fossil fuels. The second step that we've done is diversify away from the Russians into, yes, you're right, liquefied gas, that's true. But we do that because we also know we need it right now, but it's also the infrastructure that is fit for purpose for the green hydrogen. Therefore, the agreement I made together with the American President, Joe Biden, is not only about LNG, but also about our common goal to, as soon as possible, replace the gas by green hydrogen in the infrastructure that we are investing together. So 2 examples that show that if there's anything that happens, this war also pushes us, rightly so, away from the dependency from fossil fuels into the right way to go forward to investment in the renewables, and therefore the European Green Deal is as needed as never before.
Thank you very much. Philip, you want to come back?
Oui, je vous ai bien entendu. Maintenant, sur l'agriculture, enfin, ce qui est vrai pour l'énergie est vrai pour l'agriculture. Il faudra affranchir notre agriculture de sa dépendance aux énergies fossiles. Mais alors, je voudrais continuer sur la ligne de Stéphane. Est-ce que la deuxième victime collatérale de Vladimir Poutine sera l'état de droit au sein de l'Union européenne? Il y a un vrai risque, sera l'état de droit au sein de l'Union européenne. On a clairement des problèmes, vous les avez évoqués. Je voudrais bien que vous développiez un petit peu sur les actions que vous comptez entreprendre dans les semaines qui viennent, parce que ce qui s'est passé dimanche dernier en Hongrie montre le résultat d'un contrôle total des médias par le pouvoir.
Yes, for that, 2 minutes. And otherwise, perhaps I can have a little bit more. Indeed, and I hinted already at that, that looking at Hungary, we now have to look at the topic of conditionality mechanism. It is in force since January 21. Not a single case is lost. I want to be very clear here. Otherwise, we would not be today able to do what we want to do. We have prepared the guidelines. Many thanks for the support here in doing that. And you have seen the ECJ ruling that was reassuring that the court fully confirmed the approach followed by the Commission. But they also underlined that it's always needed to inform the member states and give them, and this is of course also rule of law, give them the opportunity to explain and to answer questions. That's what we've done. We've sent a letter to Hungary with questions. They have answered, and we've carefully assessed the result of these questions. And our conclusion is we have to move on the next step. And therefore, the Commissioner Hahn has today spoken to the Hungarian authorities and informed them that we will now send the letter of formal notification to start the conditionality mechanism. As you know, this triggers a procedure that has specific timelines, so a process is going on now.
Thank you very much. Esther de Lange is next.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Madam Commission President, you already touched upon the fact that the war in Ukraine has demonstrated how dependent Russia is on fossil fuel imports from Russia. It was to the question of Philip Lambert's. At the same time, we're in a situation that inflation is reaching levels not seen for decades. I think it's 11-point-something% in my own member states. And our families and SMEs are already feeling the consequences of these incredibly high energy prices. How will the Commission ensure in this economic environment that we couldn't have foreseen when Fit for 55 was put on the table, that we will deliver on Fit for 55 with the objectives that we have for 2030, 2050? Will that be business as usual as foreseen at the time of publication, or are adaptations maybe needed? Thank you.
Rightly so, you were mentioning the high energy prices as really pressing families and businesses. What is the high energy price and high electricity price all about? As you know, rightly so, I think 20 years ago, when we designed the common energy and electricity market, it was decided that, first of all, the renewables, at that time a small share, were pushed into the electricity market. And then the different other kinds of energy are following. And at the very end comes in the most expensive energy source. But this most expensive energy source that comes into the market then is defining the price. This was well designed for a time where there were little renewables and lots of gas. Today it's different. If you look at the figures, they are very different in different member states, but overall, there's an enormous push forward for the renewables, and they are cost efficient. I mean, once in place, the costs are tiny. Then you have topics like the nuclear that is coming in, then you have other energy sources, and in the very end, gas, not a big share anymore, is coming in and dominating the price. So if there's anything we have to do to relieve the families and the business sector, is we have to work on the gas price. And there are two options. We have given recommendation for short-term measures, a toolbox member states are using. But in the mid and long term, the one topic is get rid of fossil fuels. This is also get rid of gas. We've discussed that. The other topic is look at the composition of the energy market. Is it really still appropriate that it is dominated by the gas price with all the consequences, or is it time to think of a new future model that is fit for purpose also with the new reality that we are all investing in and moving towards as much renewables as possible. And having said that, we'll deliver on that actually mid-May with a detailed plan, so-called Repower EU on that. Having said that, this is implicitly, of course, also advocating that Fit for 55, with the goal to honour the European Green Deal and the climate law that we have concluded all together, is absolutely the right way to go. Of course, now it's in the hands of the Parliament and of the Council also to find the right balance. But the general direction must be get rid of gas, get rid of fossil fuels, and go into all the topics that you are dealing with in Fit for 55.
Esther, you want to come back?
Very quickly, thank you for that reply. And of course, that will bear fruit in the medium to long term. But at the same time, I have vulnerable households in the Netherlands, but also in Germany, also in Romania, and all our member states, where families are putting the heating, even though it's freezing outside, on 16 because they can't afford anymore. And you promised change that would leave nobody behind. And had you asked me at the time, I would have said that Fit for 55 is challenging, in terms of legislation, in terms of technical issues, and socially. I would at this moment say the biggest challenge is the social challenge. And how can we together deliver on that promise of leaving nobody behind? We have the Social Climate Fund. Is it enough?
So in the very, very short term, we've presented measures to the member states really to leave nobody behind. That is, for example, that you work on the retail price, that you tax the windfall profits that are without any question there. Member states do that, and we leave thus vulnerable households or small businesses. It's happening in the member states themselves. But you're right, in the midterm, this transition from fossil fuels into renewables has to be accompanied by a social climate fund. We have made proposals how to get there, how to fund it, and the principle is very simple. There are incomes that, of course, can afford to move easily into the new, clean way to use energy. But there are households, it's impossible for them to do that. And these households need the support of all of us, and this is embedded in the Social Climate Fund.
Thank you very much. Mohammed Shahim is next.
Thank you, Chair. Dear President von der Leyen, 2.5 years ago, you shared with us your vision on the European Green Deal and called us our man on the moon project. You've had the full support of S&D on this. However, we can only call the Green Deal a success when we finish it as a whole. And that is what my group has signed in for. Lately, we have seen some adjustments in the timeline. Some legislative files have been postponed, some even twice. Yes, we understand that when we are dealing with an unprecedented situation and skyrocketing energy prices. And some see this as the perfect excuse to delay. But the climate crisis cannot be paused. The biodiversity crisis cannot be paused. So my question to you, Madam President, can you agree that our Man on the Moon project will only succeed when we have a complete European Green Deal? Do you agree that we are in a biodiversity crisis and desperately need the nature restoration law and the revision of the Sustainable Use of Pesticides Directive? And can you explain to us why this is postponed twice?
Thank you, President.
Both will be tabled before the summer. So here, and I can basically underline every word that you've said. I mean, the drama of the climate crisis is the so-called horizon. We all know that. Because it seems to be so far away, it is not far away at all. But because it seems so far away, it is so difficult to keep the attention and the urgency high. What that topic is concerned. It's our responsibility to do that. It's our responsibility to tell people also the difference they can look forward with the European Green Deal, with a successful fight against climate change, but also what might happen if we're not successful. And we all remember the last summer, for example. I don't have to go into details anymore, where we got an idea what it means, and it will happen again and again. The droughts, the floodings, the hurricanes, with all the catastrophes that are coming along, this will haunt us if we don't move on fast and efficient. So you have my full support. As I said, both topics that you're mentioning will be tabled before the summer. And we all have to work very hard that besides the incredible impact that this war has on us, and that is besides the fact that it is taken, rightly so, all our attention and all our energy, we don't lose focus on the huge crisis that is looming in the background, and that is the climate crisis.
Thank you. Mohammed, you want to come back?
A very short follow-up, because I think the latest moment for us to really still tackle these two very important issues within this legislative period is, let's say, June 2022. So let me just ask a very simple, strict yes or no question. Can we expect these two legislations, let's say, by 22 June 2022? Yes or no?
What is the last week of Parliament in summer here we have? Is it that week?
I mean, it's postponed to June 22. And I mean, summer, so, yeah. I mean, summer is, let's say...
No, before we go into summer break, it will be tabled. I cannot oversee the date in June, but before we go into summer break, it will be tabled. Perhaps
there's a play on dates then. Thank you. Gunnar Beck.
Vielen Dank. Guten Tag, Frau von der Leyen. Vielen Dank für Ihr Kommen. You yourself called your commission a geopolitical commission, which would promote the European way of life and seek to assume a stronger role for Europe in the world. Now, you said these were long-standing concerns of yours, which would inspire your presidency. Now, in 2014, the European Council adopted Regulation 833, which prohibits the sale of dual goods to Russia. Now, these are goods, we all know, or technology, which may be put to military use. Now, according to various press reports in the Brussels Times and, oddly enough, also the Deutsche Welle, between 2015 and 18, German companies exported electronic components which appear to have found their way into Russian drones. And there's also talk of German sales of depleted uranium. Now, during the relevant years, you were Germany's defense minister. So my question to you is really quite simple. Can you explain to us why these transactions were approved by the German Economics Ministry, which I believe is the agency that approves all arms exports, if they are allowed? And presumably this happened with the assent of your ministry, the Ministry of Defense. Thank you.
Are allowed, you said, if they are allowed, it's abiding to the law. I cannot oversee the assumptions you have given in your question, but if they are allowed, abiding to the law, the German government has taken the decision and the agency has then fulfilled.
Is there a supplementary question? I presume you don't have one.
Council Regulation 883 is quite clear. It says, I think in Article 2, it shall be prohibited to sell, supply, transfer or export directly or indirectly dual-use goods and technology and any items which may be intended in their entirety or in part for military use or for a military end user. Thank you.
The President needs a microphone.
The sentence afterwards.
The sentence before says, where there is no sentence, it's recital number 7. In order to ensure that the measures provided for in this regulation are effective, it should enter into force immediately. And the sentence afterwards, sorry. Well, where the end user is the Russian military, any dual-use goods and technology procured by it shall be deemed for military use. I'm not sure that advances your case.
So this proves that everything was done abiding to the law, and this concludes my answer.
Thank you very much. Next is Alexander Vondra. Yeah, we see you. Turn on his microphone, please. 604.
Yeah, did not work before. Madam President, let me raise a question on behalf of the ECR. I think that this Putin aggressive war against Ukraine has changed everything. And the countries which are hit most by that are the countries of Central and Eastern Europe. They are hit by security dimension. They must arm, so NATO is very helpful here. They are hit by humanitarian crisis. 3.5 million refugees were accommodated in the families, not in the camps of our countries. And in the matter of 4 weeks, not in the matter of 1 million in a year like 2015. We are hit by energy crisis. We are will be hit by food crisis. So, and for the time being, we just hear that, you are going to punish for the Poland, Hungary, which did not bring any result. We can see this in the election just over the weekend. So do you have something positive also for the Central and Eastern European countries in the time of when they are really in need of some solidarity?
Thank you, President.
Yes. The Central and Eastern European countries, and mostly their population, is outstanding, impressive, and they are a shining example how to receive the refugees from Ukraine. And therefore, they have our full support. We have flexibilized and mobilized 17 billion euros that can now be used, for example, for healthcare, schooling, housing, support of Ukrainian refugees. We know that sometimes the procedures are too long. Therefore, we have accelerated within these 17 billion euros, 3.4 billion euros that can be dispersed immediately. And afterwards, you can, prove the billing and all the accounting that has to be done. So we are very impressed by the Central and Eastern European population, the way the population is dealing with our Ukrainian friends, and they have this full support, and this is a very clear message.
Thank you.
In that respect, I think it might be also necessary to say that, as you mentioned, 2015, it shows that war refugees always find protection in the European Union. This is a core principle of the European Union. And I have also not forgotten that in 2015 there were member states that protected the war refugees from Syria at that time.
Thank you very much. Mr. Vondra, do you want to come back?
Yeah, now it's just 80% are the little kids and the remains are their mothers. That's a bit different. But question to gas, you were talking about the common purchases on behalf of the EU. So what we see now in Qatar is just a run by Germany, Italy, the member states to buy the last remaining gas. So is Commission going to Qatar?
This is not strictly speaking a follow-up question, but if the President wants to answer, you can answer.
So we share the same approach to say it's better to have a joint procurement because we have an enormous market power. Let me give you one figure. If you look at the pipeline gas, we, the European Union, are purchasing 75% of the global pipeline gas. So if we act as 27, we are really powerful with a lot of purchasing power, and therefore I recommend to do that together. And what the Commission has done is already agreed with the United States that for this year we get an additional 15 billion cubic meter of LNG, which will replace the Russian LNG for this year. And from next year on, we will have an additional 50 billion cubic meter LNG, which will replace 1/3 already of the Russian gas. So you see, the Commission is active.
Thank you very much. Next is Martin Schüdewan.
Vielen Dank, Frau Präsidentin. Frau Kommissionspräsidentin, lassen Sie mich zunächst sagen, dass meine Fraktion diese Fragestunde sehr unterstützt hat. Aus 2 Gründen. Erstens gibt Ihnen das die Gelegenheit, politische Bilanz zu ziehen, und zweitens uns Abgeordneten die Gelegenheit, unsere demokratische Kontrollfunktion besser auszuüben gegenüber der Kommission. Ich habe eine konkrete Frage an Sie, und zwar bezieht die sich auf eine Aussage, die Sie zu Beginn Ihrer Amtszeit getätigt haben. Sie haben sich hier vor dem Haus für mehr Steuergerechtigkeit ausgesprochen. Und wenn ich mir die Bilanz an dieser Stelle ansehe, dann muss ich doch sagen, ist reichlich wenig seitdem passiert. Eine effektive Besteuerung von Digitalunternehmen ist der eher vagen Idee der globalen Mindestbesteuerung von multinationalen Unternehmen gewichen. Ein Regelwerk, das sich so löchrig wie ein Schweizer Käse präsentiert. Die Finanztransaktionssteuer, die wir diskutiert haben, ist nicht eingeführt worden, keine Spur davon. Die würde 40 Milliarden Euro jedes Jahr uns zur Verfügung stellen an zusätzlichen Eigenmitteln, unter anderem auch für den Green New Deal. Und was mich auch sehr irritiert, ist, dass die europäischen Steueroasen weiterhin in Ruhe gelassen werden und dass es überhaupt keine politischen Bemühungen gibt, diese Steueroasen zu schließen. Vor dem Hintergrund der aktuellen kriegerischen Auseinandersetzung des Krieges in der Ukraine und unseren Versuchen, gezielte Sanktionen auch zu implementieren gegenüber den Oligarchen, die diesen Krieg unterstützen, sieht man, wie schädlich diese Politik auch sein kann, wenn die Steueroasen nicht geschlossen werden, wie schwer es uns fällt, dann an das Geld heranzukommen derjenigen, die diesen Krieg unterstützen. Und meine Frage lautet, wann wird die Kommission endlich etwas gegen dieses kriminelle Geld unternehmen? Wann werden die europäischen Steueroasen endlich geschlossen?
Thank you, President. Ich unterstreiche mit Ihnen oder bin mit Ihnen einer Meinung, dass wir alles tun müssen, um diese Steueroasen zu schließen und vor allen Dingen, um kriminelle Aktivitäten zu unterbinden. Ich teile natürlich nicht Ihre Ansicht, was die allgemeine Entwicklung angeht, denn ich bin der Meinung, dass wir einen Riesenschritt nach vorne gemacht haben mit der Einigkeit in der OECD, mit der globalen Mindestbesteuerung. Wir haben das noch nicht abgeschlossen, aber es ist ein Riesenschritt vorwärts, wenn das gelingt. Nicht nur für die Europäische Union, sondern auch für alle die anderen, die mit in diesem OECD-Beschluss drin sind. Und deshalb war es uns auch recht, zu sagen, okay, wir halten unsere Digitalsteuer, die einen viel geringeren Effekt gehabt hätte, zurück, solange wir sicher sein können, dass dieses breitere, größere und bessere Konzept der Mindestbesteuerung und der Besteuerung der großen Unternehmen, da ist ja noch ein zweites Standbein mit dabei, solange dies gut vorangeht. Ich würde immer plädieren, und Sie haben es ja eigentlich eben selber auch zu Recht gesagt, Steuer und Steuerflucht heißt, man muss global agieren. Es reicht nicht, dass wir alleine als EU 27 vorankommen, sondern wir müssen global agieren. Also kann ich nur alle einladen, mit daran zu helfen, dass diese OECD-Initiative dann auch erfolgreich abgeschlossen wird.
Thank you. Martin, do you want to come back?
Ja, sehr gern, weil ich wiederum diese Antwort nicht teile und an der Stelle auch für unbefriedigend achte, weil die globale Mindestbesteuerung von dem Steuersatz 15% ausgeht und kleine und mittelständische Unternehmen in der Europäischen Union einen durchschnittlichen Steuersatz von 23% zum Beispiel haben. Also multinationale Unternehmen werden hier besser gestellt als das Handwerk zum Beispiel oder als die Betriebe, die unsere Gesellschaften am Leben halten. Und wenn man einen Steuersatz ähnlich dem für kleine und mittelständische implementierte, dann wäre das Steueraufkommen viel höher. Es läge bei schätzungsweise 460 Milliarden, gibt es Schätzungen, und mit 15% liegt der Steuersatz bei nur ungefähr 120. Deshalb meine Frage, was halten Sie von zusätzlichen Eigeneinnahmen wie zum Beispiel Krisengewinnsteuer, also exzessive Gewinne besteuern? Was halten Sie davon, endlich eine aktive Quellensteuer durchzusetzen, also dort zu besteuern, wo wirtschaftliche Aktivität stattfindet? Und was halten Sie davon, endlich die Steuerschlupflöcher zu schließen und endlich auch den europäischen Steueroasen den Geldfluss sozusagen zu verwehren?
Thank you, President.
Also, Steuerschlupflöcher zu schließen, ist immer eine ehrenwerte Aufgabe. Mir wäre es schon sehr recht, wenn die großen Multinationalen überhaupt adäquat Steuern zahlen. Und das ist ja der Punkt, der bei dieser OECD-Mindestbesteuerung erreicht werden soll. Es wäre ein Riesenschritt voran, auch übrigens in der Europäischen Union. Es ist ja nicht so, dass hier alles Gold ist, sondern es wäre ein Riesenschritt voran, wenn wir das auch in der Europäischen Union so schaffen würden. Und deshalb mein Plädoyer dafür zu arbeiten. Grundsätzlich ist die Besteuerung dann eine Aufgabe der Mitgliedstaaten. Aber ich glaube, wenn man eine allgemeine Mindestbesteuerung hinkriegt, wie sie eben skizziert ist, für alle, auch die großen Multinationalen, fällt es den Mitgliedstaaten auch sehr viel einfacher. Es ist eigentlich selbsterklärend, dann für die kleineren und mittleren Unternehmen deutliche Entlastung auch zuzulassen.
Thank you. Next is Sophie in 't Veld.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam President, it is very good that you will be triggering the conditionality regulation on Hungary. It's a bit unfortunate that the door is closed when the horse has bolted. Will you make the same mistake with Poland? Despite the fact that the Polish government has no intention to even meet the conditions, we hear rumours that the Commission is ready to approve the RRF plan and to release the funds. Can you state here in a very clear, simple and unambiguous yes or no, will you or will you not travel to Warsaw on the 9th of April and approve the plans and free the way for the release of funds? Would you agree with me that such a decision would be a slap in the face of the Polish people standing up against autocracy, and would you agree with me that it would also mean reducing the rulings of the European Court of Justice to mere non-binding recommendations? Thank you.
Thank you, President.
So you put several questions into your question where you wanted a yes or no answer. This is impossible, but I disagree with many of your hypothetical arguments, but I have to say, yes, I will travel on the 9th of April to Warsaw, but not to approve the RP, but to do a global pledging for refugees in Ukraine and outside Ukraine, not only concerning our member states, but also a global pledging with the G20 -1, for example, also a global pledging concerning all the private companies, not only the European Union, but also globally, to really support the refugees, not only in the European Union, but also in Ukraine. So therefore, that's one part. Now, on the other part of your question, which is not a yes or no answer, I was very clear on the mid-July, I think it was here in the plenary, that we discussed what are the conditions for the Polish RRP. It's the long-standing requirement in the European semester, independence of the judiciary, and here we look at 3 reform requirements. The one is dismantling the disciplinary chamber. The second one is the reform of the disciplinary regime. And the third one is the process to reinstall the unlawfully dismissed judges. Where does it come from? It is part of a ECJ ruling. And with all the member states, we have always been very clear. There are reform requirements you have to fulfill. Then there's the disbursement of the investment. You do not have to do everything 100%. We don't ask any member state for the 100% pension reform or the 100% labour market reform. But long-standing major requirements of the European semester you have to do. These are the 3 requirements we want to see in the RRP fulfilled. How could it be fulfilled? The Polish government has to bring a law through the parliament that fulfills these 3 criteria. We're not there yet, just to make that clear. We are close, but we're not there yet. And when the criteria are fulfilled, then, or when the law has passed the parliament, then we look whether this law is fit for purpose to fulfill these 3 criteria I was just naming initially. If that is the case, so a milestone is reached, then a disbursement can start. This is the process. We're not there yet. Therefore, on the 9th of April, I'm going to be in Warsaw for the pledging.
Thank you. Sophie, do you want to come back quickly?
Yes, thank you. Of course, support to Poland for the reception of refugees is not a debate. But what you're saying is the rule of law is non-negotiable, but we can negotiate on the way it is implemented. I have heard in recent weeks too much speculation about what that means in practice, Madam President. 3 years ago, you asked for our confidence. When there is so much speculation, there cannot be confidence. I would really ask you to be crystal clear about what it is, what the criteria are that the Commission will apply. I think this House and the citizens of Poland, the citizens of Hungary, indeed the citizens of all the 27 member states have a right to know exactly what the standards are. Thank you.
The standards are dismantling of the disciplinary chamber, reform of the disciplinary regime process to reinstall the unlawfully dismissed judges. This is the core of the ECJ judgment, and actually a judgment where Poland is paying a daily fine right now for not fulfilling this order of the ECJ. So we've taken that as a very clear benchmark. We want this reform done. The best way to have this reform done is have a law that has gone through the parliament, where we then can look whether it is fit for purpose, it fulfills the criteria. If not, the milestone is not fulfilled. If yes, the milestone is fulfilled and a disbursement for the European Green Deal, for the digitalization, for the resilience can start. We're not there yet, but I described as you wanted the process.
Thank you very much. Madam President, do you have time for one more question? Sven Simon, and then we close.
Frau Präsidentin, zunächst einmal ganz herzlichen Dank, dass Sie sich den Fragen stellen. Ich bin der Meinung, die letzte Stunde war eine Sternstunde der europäischen parlamentarischen Demokratie. Ich wollte ursprünglich ganz in die Richtung fragen von Frau Kollegin Bischoff. Mir brennt aber noch ein anderes Thema auf den Nägeln. Sie sehen jetzt, dass wir in dieser Zeit dieses grausamen Krieges verlässliche Partnerschaften in anderen Demokratien in der Welt brauchen. Wir kommen bei den Handelsverträgen, die wir schließen wollten, nicht so recht voran. Es gibt kaum einen Fortschritt in der letzten Zeit. Wir brauchen sie aber nicht nur für Wirtschaft, Wohlstand und Arbeitsplätze, sondern immer mehr auch, um unsere europäischen Standards zu setzen in der Welt. Wir brauchen sie, um like-minded Demokratien enger an uns zu binden, gerade auch für solche Krisensituationen, wie wir sie jetzt erleben. Plant die Kommission jetzt diese Zäsur dieses schrecklichen Ukraine-Krieges für eine neue Offensive, die Handelsverträge mit Neuseeland und Australien zu verhandeln und das mit den Mercosur-Staaten zu ratifizieren?
Ja, wir sind mit Neuseeland und Australien gut vorangekommen. Neuseeland sogar etwas weiter fortgeschritten, als das in Australien der Fall ist. Wir werden anfangen, mit Indien zu verhandeln. Ich glaube, auch das ist wichtig. Bei Mexiko ist noch einige Strecke zu tun. Ich glaube, wenn ich das mir erlauben darf, wir müssen uns grundsätzlich die Herangehensweise an die großen Handelsabkommen noch einmal überlegen, ob dieses vollumfängliche immer der Weisheit letzter Schluss ist. Denn wir sehen, dass wir dann auch oft einfach über Jahre einen Stillstand haben. Unsere kanadischen Freunde fragen uns zu Recht angesichts der Situation, die Sie eben beschrieben haben, warum schließt ihr mit uns CETA nicht endgültig ab? Erklärt uns, was wir falsch machen. Und es ist schwer, eine Antwort darauf zu finden, denn in der Tat, im Augenblick gucken wir, dass wir Supply Chains und dass wir die Abhängigkeit von Critical Raw Materials, Critical Minerals, seltenen Erden, seltenen Gasen, die wir in Russland haben, loswerden und stattdessen in eine geografisch ähnliche Region, aber mit einer Demokratie, nämlich Kanada, gehen und mit ihnen besprechen, wie man zum Beispiel diese kritischen Mineralien umweltfreundlich gewinnen kann, unter anständigen Arbeitsbedingungen. Dann sind die natürlich etwas teurer, aber das ist eine Region, mit der es sich wirklich lohnt, engere Handelsbeziehungen zu knüpfen. Deshalb meiner etwas längeren Rede kurzer Sinn. Ja, wir arbeiten daran, weiter voranzuschreiten. Wir finden aber auch neue Formen, wo man vielleicht schneller zum Schluss kommt. Ein Beispiel möchte ich noch erwähnen. Mit den Vereinigten Staaten zum Beispiel bewährt sich sehr der Trade and Technology Council, den wir im Augenblick haben, weil wir dann schwierige Themen gezielt angehen können in kleineren Paketen und sie lösen können. Sie haben das gesehen bei den Steel Tariffs, Sie haben das gesehen jetzt beim LNG. Im digitalen Teil haben wir ähnliche Punkte, die wir gemeinsam bewältigen müssen. Also unterm Strich, ja, wir sollten unsere Partner gut auswählen. Die Frage der Demokratie und der Verlässlichkeit sollte eine ganz große Rolle spielen. Das haben wir gelernt in der Pandemie und das lernen wir jetzt in diesem Krieg. Und wir sollten flexibler mit den Paketen sein, dass wir auch wirklich Strecke machen.
Thank you. Sven, we don't have too much time. Thank you. We try to squeeze in as much as possible, but Commission President, would like to thank you for giving us more time than we originally asked for. Thanks for apologies for the technical problems, but I think this, for a question time, first time, did very well after 12 years since this has last taken place in this plenary. A lot of you colleagues have asked to take the floor. Can I ask you to still register your questions for the next question time with the High Representative, if those questions can be put to him? Thank you very much. This part is closed.
Dear colleagues, please take your seats so that we can begin. Muito boa tarde a todos e a todas. Devo começar pelo procedimento de aprovação da ata da sessão de ontem. Essa ata e os textos aprovados já foram distribuídos. Pergunto se há alguma observação. Não havendo, a ata está aprovada. Now we move on to the next item in our agenda, question time with the Vice President of the European Commission and High Representative Josep Borrell. I would like to recall that the theme of this exchange of views is the EU's security and strategic compass. So I hope that you can respect the theme that was chosen for this question time. And now I will recall the rules. Before that, I would just like to welcome Josep Borrell to our plenary for this question time session. Now I will recall the rules in Portuguese. Relembro que estamos nesta sessão a testar algumas das recomendações do Grupo de Reflexão para uma reforma do Parlamento e um dos pontos é justamente a reintrodução do período de perguntas à Comissão. Este período de perguntas ao Vice-Presidente durará cerca de 60 minutos, segue o modelo das perguntas à Comissão que acabamos de utilizar no diálogo com o Presidente da Comissão. Por conseguinte, as perguntas não são atribuídas previamente aos deputados e, portanto, aqueles que desejarem fazer uma pergunta deverão registar o seu pedido agora, utilizando a função Catch the Eye na sua máquina de voto, depois de, naturalmente, terem inserido o seu cartão de voto. Haverá 1 minuto para fazer uma pergunta, 2 minutos para a resposta e depois 30 segundos para uma pergunta complementar, seguida de 2 minutos de resposta no final. Foram disponibilizadas estas instruções no hemiciclo. Recordo que os lugares são livres, com exceção das 2 primeiras filas, que são atribuídas aos chefes de gabinete, aos chefes dos grupos políticos. Durante o período de perguntas, as intervenções terão lugar a partir do lugar de cada um neste hemiciclo e convido todos os oradores, naturalmente, a respeitarem o tempo de uso de palavra atribuído. Os colegas poderão necessitar de alguns momentos para registrar os pedidos de formulação de perguntas através das respectivas máquinas de voto. Assim, volto a solicitar que apresentem os pedidos agora e começaremos de imediato com a primeira pergunta. E começo assim por dar a palavra ao nosso colega Vandam Kerderlere do PPE. Tem a palavra.
Meneer de hoge vertegenwoordiger, ik sta recht voor u. Bedankt om hier op deze question time erbij te zijn en inderdaad te kunnen spreken over een thema zo belangrijk als het strategisch kompas. Er is een hele lange weg ernaartoe afgelegd en net op het einde werd het nog helemaal overschaduwd door de oorlog in Oekraïne. Maar nu is het eindelijk aangenomen en begint inderdaad het echte werk. En de eerste concrete doelstelling uit hoofdstuk 3 van het kompas, het hoofdstuk over de investeringen, dat komt er al meteen aan. De lidstaten moeten tegen midden dit jaar objectieven klaar hebben om meer en beter gecoördineerde defensieuitgaven te hebben. Mijn vraag aan u is dan ook simpel. Midden 2022 komt er heel snel aan, die deadline is heel dichtbij. Hoe kan u ervoor zorgen dat de lidstaten inderdaad die cruciale eerste deadline halen en we ervoor zorgen dat het strategisch kompas niet meteen met een valse noot start, maar integendeel meteen een snelle start kan nemen? Dank u.
Muito obrigado. Sr. José Borrell, para responder.
Sí, muchas gracias por esta primera pregunta que inaugura este nuevo formato de preguntas parlamentarias. Me alegro que sea con respecto a la brújula estratégica. Creo que es un buen inicio y, desde luego, sería un grave error que todos los Estados miembros aumentaran su gasto en defensa de una forma homotética a la situación actual. Sería un gran despilfarro que pusiéramos la actual distribución de inversiones por Estados a un nivel superior sin modificar su estructura. El Consejo Europeo ha tomado cartas en el asunto y ha pedido a la Comisión y a la Agencia Europea de la Defensa que analice los defense gaps, es decir, la distancia entre lo que tiene cada Estado y lo que debería tener, para proponer planes que permitan converger y reducir estas diferencias. Naturalmente, los Estados miembros son soberanos y harán lo que les parezca, pero espero que todos estén de acuerdo en seguir unas líneas directrices que permitan coordinar el mayor gasto en defensa que tendremos que hacer a escala europea para que éste resulte en una mayor capacidad operativa del conjunto de nuestras Fuerzas Armadas. En eso, la Agencia Europea de la Defensa tendrá que jugar un papel fundamental, ser más conocida, estar más en contacto con los agentes, tanto los departamentos de defensa de cada Estado miembro como con los sectores industriales. Y como usted ha dicho, nos queda muy poco tiempo para hacerlo. Nos queda muy poco tiempo para marcar cuáles son los planes de desarrollo que cada Estado tendrá que seguir si queremos que el resultado de esta tarea de coordinación resulte en un mejor uso de los recursos que los contribuyentes